Man, it's your boy OG. And ladies and gentlemen, we coming with the Halloween shit. We coming with the spooky shit. It's not try not to get scared, but it's gonna be a good reaction. Today we got the demon, the Victorian demon. Let's get it. Let's get it. I hit the wrong.
Hey, 42 here.
Victorian demon.
When we imagine Victorian London and hear the name Jack, certain images
The
immediately
Ripper.
spring to mind. Sharp knives, pools of blood, groups of annoying tourists taking guided tours around Whitechapel. But there was another, less known Jack, who stalked the streets of London. A Jack who not only terrified the local population, but spread fear around Great Britain for some 67 years, garnering more media attention than the entire Kardashian family whilst he was at it. His name was Spring-Heeled Jack.
Type shit.
But what exactly was he? A paranormal creature? An extraterrestrial entity from a high-gravity world?
No, go back.
Paranormal creature? Spring-Heeled Jack. But what exactly
That's him? That's him?
was he? A paranormal creature? An extraterrestrial entity from a high-gravity world? A demon summoned by practitioners of the occult? Or perhaps not a single man, but a loosely associated group of rich douchebags terrorizing people for fun? All of these options were suggested at one time or another. But as for which one was true, well, I'll let you make up your own mind. The legend begins in 1837, when stories began to circulate of young women being accosted by a demonic creature on the streets of London. One of the first recorded accounts was made by Mary Stevens, a servant girl who was mauled by a terrifying figure whilst walking home through Clapham Common.
Oh my
According to
goodness.
Mary, the figure jumped out at her from a dark alley, grabbed her arms with his claws, which she later described as cold and clammy like those of a corpse, and started to rip at her clothes. When Mary screamed in terror, the stranger fled into the darkness. This, as we'll find out, was very much a feature of the apparition's work, the fleeing. He only seemed to be in it for the scares. The following day, a similar incident occurred in the same area. Midway through the attack, the strange figure once again fled the scene, jumping in front of a passing carriage, causing the coachman to lose control and crash. The mysterious figure made his escape by leaping over a 9-foot wall in a single bound. Cackling all the while,
No NBA player can do that. No, he's a demon. He got hops. He's a demon. He's a demon.
with high-pitched laughter, the legend of Spring-Heeled Jack was born. But who was he? What was his motive? And why wasn't he snapped up by the local basketball team on the 9th of January?
So that's why they call him Spring Heels. He can leap. Spring Heel Jack.
1838. Sir John Cowan, Lord Mayor of London, revealed he had received an anonymous letter claiming that some individual from the highest ranks of life had accepted a wager to visit the villagers of London in 3 different disguises: a ghost, a bear, and a devil, and that the unmanly villain had succeeded in depriving several ladies of their senses already. The story was reported in the Times on the 9th of January 1838, and within a few days, Cowan had received hundreds of letters from all around London: Hammersmith, Stockwell, Brixton, Camberwell, Vauxhall, Lewisham, Blackheath, also complaining of similar wicked pranks. The Lord Mayor dismissed the more outlandish reports as imaginations running wild, and he had a point.
So 1836, 1837, when this took place, they didn't really have good Halloween costumes. I don't know how this could be a prank. And a man jumping 9 feet or 10 feet, that's crazy.
Because some of them are what psychiatrists might describe as absolutely batshit crazy, but others were much more difficult to just explain away. The first time Spring-Heeled Jack made it into the newspapers was in February 1838, after what were probably the 2 most famous sightings, the first involving Jane Alsop and the second Lucy Scales. Late one night, Jane Alsop answered the door to a police officer who asked if she could supply him with a light, claiming he had detained Spring-Heeled Jack in a nearby lane. The moment Jane handed him the candle, the policeman threw off his large cloak to reveal what Jane would later describe as a hideous and frightful appearance, with eyes resembling red balls of fire. The phony policeman, who it seemed was none other than Spring-Heeled Jack himself, proceeded to vomit blue and white flame, which, to be fair, does sound like some kind of supernatural entity.
Wait a second, what?
Or somebody having the worst hangover of their life. Jack then grabbed hold of Jane and started tearing at her gown and flesh with his metallic claws, as was his custom. But, as usual, he fled the moment she got over her shock and started screaming. Did he just have particularly sensitive ears? I guess we'll never know. 9 days later, Lucy Scales and her sister were walking down an alley when they observed a large cloaked figure in the shadows. As Lucy approached him, he spurted blue flames in her face, which shocked her so much that she instantly dropped to the ground and had violent fits which lasted for several hours. Yeah, can't really blame you, to be honest, Lucy. No sooner had the Times reported the attack on Jane Alsop, there was a follow-up story featuring an individual by the name of Thomas Milbank, who had been heard in the Morgan's Arms immediately after the attack, boasting that he was Spring-Heeled Jack. He was swiftly arrested and tried at Lambeth Street Court, but was never prosecuted because of his cast iron alibi. You see, Jane insisted that her attacker had breathed fire, and Tom insisted he couldn't do that. Case dismissed. We can only assume Thomas Milbank and O.J. Simpson had the same lawyer. After all this publicity, it's fair to say Spring-Heeled Jack,
I like the comedic jabs. I like
whoever he was, had become one of the most infamous characters of the period. The attacks were not only regularly reported in the newspapers, they also elicited a huge police response and even attracted the attention of a few vigilantes hoping to be the first to detain the Phantom. Even the 70-year-old Duke of Wellington went out to look for Jack on horseback, armed to the teeth. But then he was always looking for the slightest excuse to shoot someone. Jack continued to capture the public imagination.
We need to hear his story now.
And sightings started to spread out across the country. On the 14th of April 1838, the Brighton Gazette published a story about a gardener in Rose.
1 second.
Rose Hill, Sussex, who had been terrified by a bizarre creature that looked like a bear or some other four-footed animal. Apparently, the creature ran along the garden wall on all fours before chasing the gardener around for some time. That looked like
literally recording a video. Alright, I'm back.
In Rose Hill, Sussex, who had been terrified by a bizarre creature that looked like a bear or some other four-footed animal. Apparently, the creature ran along the garden wall on all fours before chasing the gardener around for some time. These reports of Jack as some kind of supernatural, furry animal were relatively common. In Hammersmith, he even popped up dressed as an immense baboon. I guess even demonic apparitions need to have hobbies. Such was his fame that pretty much whenever a strange figure...
So, I'm lost a little bit. So they said the demon, the bear, and another animal is gonna visit them. This is crazy.
Appeared, particularly one with a good leap on him. People were quick to jump to the obvious Spring-Heeled Jack conclusion. In 1877, witnesses spotted a horrific, sinister creature with one flashing eye, leaping around near a canal in Neverton, Birmingham. They immediately decided it was Spring-Heeled Jack, of course, and so they called the police, who surrounded the demon and somehow found a way to detain it. It was at that point, however, they realised the demonic beast they had captured was in fact none other than Joseph Darby, future world spring jumping champion, who'd been out training at night in a miner's helmet with a flashlight on. After some hasty apologies, Darby was released without charge. Jack.
How high could he jump? In 1877, how high could he jump, bro? Because if he jumping above buildings, we've just digressed physically ever since then.
Jack was also worming his creepy way into popular culture, with plays about him being performed in low-cost theatres around the country. Even the devil in Punch and Judy shows was renamed Spring-Heeled Jack for a while. He also quickly became the subject of many penny dreadfuls, the cheap serial literature of the time, in which he was portrayed as everything from a jilted lover to a supernatural entity. He was often illustrated as a devil-like figure with a goatee beard, horns, pointy ears, flashing fiery eyes, and literal springs on his boots. In one particular volume, Jack was reimagined as a kind of Victorian Batman, using various ingenious weapons and gadgets to fight crime, and presumably driving around in the Jackmobile. Oh, and by the way, just like Bruce Wayne, Jack's alter ego, the Marquis, was also a rich, privileged playboy with far too much time on his hands. The story was probably inspired by the third Marquis of Waterford, Henry de la Poer Beresford, who was thought by many to be the real Spring-Heeled Jack at the time, otherwise known as the Mad Marquis. Beresford was basically the Charlie Sheen of his day. In fact, he partied so hard that the phrase, "to paint the town red," comes from a particularly heavy night of drinking the Marquis spent with a bunch of mates, which culminated in them running around the Leicestershire town of Melton Mowbray, quite literally painting the buildings red. And if you want to delve a little deeper into that particular story, it's all detailed in my book, Stick a Flag in It, available on Amazon, link in the description. So yes, the Penny Dreadfuls vastly exaggerated the stories of Spring-Heeled Jack for reasons of entertainment, but it was this version of the spring-heeled villain who slipped off the pages and found his way back into the real world. Parents would invoke him as a kind of bogeyman to keep their kids in line by telling them Spring-Heeled Jack would leap up to their bedroom windows in the night and peer in at them if they didn't behave, which is enough to make a fully grown adult wet the bed, never mind an impressionable young child.
Yeah,
Jack
creepy.
was used for parental
100%.
support well into the 20th century, along with his colleagues, Italy's Umo Nero, Scotland's Wee Willie Winkie, and Germany's Kinderfresser, all of whom seemed to have had nothing better to do with their time than going around scaring the shit out of badly behaved children. Mind you, it wasn't just the kids who had to be worried, because Jack was also used by the local preachers as a warning against alcohol abuse. Was it only a coincidence that he was frequently spotted on the top of pubs and churches? As Jack became increasingly famous, he was spotted less and less often, and his legends eventually began to fade. Until the 1870s, that is, when the
All right. So is Springfield Jack real? That's what I want to know.
eventually began to fade. Until the 1870s, that is, when the sighting suddenly started up again. In November 1872, a report in the News of the World claimed London was in a state of commotion due to a mysterious figure known as the Peckham Ghost, who many people believed was none other than Spring-Heeled Jack himself, the malevolent trickster of the previous generation. If that was true, old Jack was certainly doing some mileage, because similar stories were coming out of Sheffield too, in the form of the Park Ghost. Once again, the popular opinion was that this spectre was in fact the ever-youthful Spring-Heeled Jack, up to his old mischief.
Up to his old mischief. Alright, SoundCloud.
One of the
Go
most
fuck with
notable
SoundCloud.
stories to come from this period took place in the Aldershot Army Barracks, one night in August 1877. a sentry's attention was caught by an unexpected figure in the darkness. When the soldier ordered the creature to halt, it advanced towards him, slapping him around the face several times. The soldier, who apparently had a rather short temper, opened fire. He snapped off several shots in quick succession, but the bullets were ineffective, and the figure disappeared, leaping into the night, covering a great distance with astonishing bounds. Lord Ernest Hamilton, who was part of the regiment, wrote about the incident in his memoir 40 Years On. He also claimed that Jack appeared several more times when they were barracked in Colchester in the winter of 1878, and that the panic was so great soldiers were ordered to shoot Spring-Heeled Jack on sight. Mind you, he also thought that each occurrence could have been a prank carried out by his fellow officer, Lieutenant Alfrey, so it's hard to know how seriously we should take those accounts.
Now I'm in the middle. I don't know what side. I don't know if he's real or he's not. I'm right in the middle. I was leaning more towards real. Now I'm leaning more towards the middle.
Whether or not the lieutenant had been busy pranking his fellow soldiers all along, he certainly couldn't have been responsible for all the sightings up and down the country since 1837. That kind of dedication to pranking would put the cast of Jackass to shame. Anyway, all weird things must come to an end, and Jack seems to have concluded his creepy career in Liverpool. In 1888, he was spotted on the rooftop of St. Francis Xavier's Church in Everton, and in 1904, he gave his final curtain call in nearby William Henry Street. Perhaps the Scousers stabbed him. So, to come back to our original question, who or what was Spring-Heeled Jack? Skeptical investigators have always been in favour of the mass hysteria theory, whilst what we'll call more creative individuals put Spring-Heeled Jack into the category of phantom attackers, creatures who may look human but display supernatural abilities and are never identified or captured. Others feel that some Jack sightings may be explained by night hag syndrome, where the sufferer becomes aware of a supernatural presence in his bedroom, usually pinning him down and preventing him from moving. The night hag was also sometimes described as the nightmare, which is where we get the modern word that's caused the residents of Elm Street so much hassle over the years. Then again, maybe there's just something in
He hits them often. He jabs those little comedic. He sticks those little comedic jabs in there real nice. I'm not gonna lie.
the name. In urban legends and folklore, the name Jack pops up everywhere. There's Jack in the Green, the sinister green man featured in May processions,
Jack in the Beanstalk.
who pretends to die and then leaps back to life. There's the Welsh character Jack O'Kent's Church, who took out a contract with the devil. There's Jack Sprat, Jack and Jill, Little Jack Horner, Jack Be Nimble. Oh, and let's not forget about Jack in the Box, the highly disturbing toy which became popular during the 1930s. A creepy toy by the name of Jack that literally springs out at you? Coincidence? Actually, yes, but hey, I had to mention it. Whoever or whatever he
I thought he was on to something.
was, Spring-Heeled Jack is still very much with us, at least in pop culture. Interestingly enough, he isn't always portrayed as the villain either. During the Second World War, Czechoslovakia had their own version of Jack, Perak the Springman of Prague, an Eastern European Captain America who fought the Nazis in a series of popular superhero cartoons, and in Philip Pullman's 1989 graphic novel, Spring-Heeled Jack. Our hero rescues a group of orphans, which is a far cry from his origins, terrifying innocent young women in dark alleyways. Jack has also popped up in the gaming world. He was a character in Assassin's Creed Syndicate, and a pair of his boots appear in the Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion, allowing the player to leap significantly higher than normal. Jack has occasionally made his way onto TV too. He was a minor character in the 2015 series Jekyll and Hyde, and a 2016 episode of Houdini and Doyle.
Hold on one second.
Rescues a group of orphans, which is a far cry from his origins, terrifying innocent young women in dark alleyways. Jack has also popped up in the gaming world. He was a character in Assassin's Creed Syndicate, and a pair of his boots appear in the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, allowing the player to leap significantly higher than normal. Jack has occasionally made his way onto TV too. He was a minor character in the 2015 series Jekyll and Hyde, and the 2016 episode of Houdini and Doyle features the eponymous duo investigating several new Spring-Heeled Jack sightings. With that kind of media presence, it's a pretty good bet we haven't seen the last of Spring-Heeled Jack, and we can only wonder when and where he'll pop up next.
So
Thanks
more
for
of
watching.
an urban legend.
You can
But
now
they
buy
was
my
still
new
fire
box, stick a flag in it.
Regardless, that was fire. Spring-Heeled Jack, the urban legend. It's been your boy OG. But with me on the next one, man. All month, October, we doing spooky stuff. And I'm gonna be the host with the most, man. Man, we gone.